All right, so let's jump right in. We're talking about a true classic, one of the cornerstones of English literature, Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. Now, on the surface, this thing is pure fantasy gold. I mean, it's got it all. Brave knights, damsels in distress, a whole menagerie of terrifying monsters. It's basically the blueprint for a lot of the fantasy stories we still love today.
And man, Spenser did not pull any punches with his descriptions. Just listen to this one. He's describing a monster called Error, and it's something else. Half serpent, half woman, and just unbelievably gross and vile. The whole poem is filled with stuff like this incredible world of heroes and monsters. But here's the thing, that's not really what the story is about.
Because what if all of it, every knight, every princess, every single monster, was actually a symbol, a stand-in for a real person, or a real political movement from Spenser's time? What if I told you that hiding underneath this epic fantasy is a secret history of Tudor England, all of it coded right into the poem? So if we're going to crack this code, we're going to need a couple of things. First, we have to understand the world Spenser is living in. And second, we need the special key he used to hide his messages right out in the open. And that key is allegory. It's a simple idea, really. Spenser wasn't just telling a story. He was using the story as a way to talk about the really big stuff, morality, religion, and the super intense politics of his day. So basically, every single character is a symbol, and every fight is a metaphor for something bigger. And you've got to understand, his era was wild. Spenser was living during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, and it was a time of just constant turmoil. You had Protestant England basically under siege from powerful Catholic countries, especially Spain. We're talking non-stop plots, assassination attempts, the ever-present threat of a full-blown invasion, which of course led to the famous Spanish Armada. For Spenser, this stuff wasn't just history in a book. This was his reality. It was the air he was breathing every single day. And look, Spenser himself even told us what he was trying to do. He wrote in a letter that his whole goal was to fashion a gentleman, basically to teach his readers how to be good, noble people. But, and this is the important part, what he considered good was completely tied up in the politics and the religious fights of his own time.
Okay, time to put on our detective hats. When you're trying to crack a code, you always start with the biggest, most obvious clues, right? Well, in The Faerie Queene, that means starting with the villains, and our first person of interest is the beautiful but seriously evil sorceress Duessa.
So in the poem, Duessa makes this huge claim about where she comes from. She says her dad is this powerful emperor who rules the entire wide West, and his throne is right there on the Tiber River. Now think about it. If you're reading this back in the 16th century, where does that immediately make you think of?
Yep, Rome. And who's the emperor of the West sitting on the Tiber? It's the Pope. So Duessa, this false witch, is a direct symbol for the Catholic Church, and more specifically for its biggest defender in England at the time, Queen Mary Tudor, or as the Protestants called her, Bloody Mary.
And the clues just keep stacking up. It's amazing. Okay, so first, we've got her father, the Pope in Rome on the Tiber River. Check. Second, there's a part in the poem where her beautiful disguise is stripped away, and she's revealed as this hideous, foul creature, which is exactly how many Protestants saw the Catholic Church at the time. And for the final nail in the coffin, her backstory says she was engaged to be married when she was just a kid, which lines up perfectly with the actual history of Mary Tudor. See? This is no random villain. She is a very specific, very pointed political symbol. All right, next on our list of bad guys, the giant Orgoglio. Now, his name is a huge giveaway. It's literally the Italian word for pride. And as the scholar Lillian Winstanley pointed out, this was a direct jab at the one quality the English always associated with their #1 enemy. That's right, we're talking about Spain. The giant Orgoglio is meant to be the overwhelming military power and what the English saw as the massive arrogance of Catholic Spain under King Philip II. So when this giant shows up, the reader is supposed to feel the threat of England's biggest and most dangerous foreign rival. Okay, so we've decoded the villains. Let's flip the script and look at the heroes. It only makes sense, right? If the bad guys are all symbols for Catholicism, then the heroes have to be symbols for Protestantism, and that's exactly what we get. So first up is our main hero, the Redcrosse Knight. He stands for holiness, and he's basically the embodiment of England's patron saint, St. George. Then there's the princess he's sworn to protect, Una. Her name means one, symbolizing the one true church, the Protestant church, and by extension, she also represents its head, Queen Elizabeth I herself.
And finally, you have the legendary Prince Arthur. He stands for the virtue of magnificence, and most scholars agree he's a stand-in for a real person, Robert Dudley, who was a powerful nobleman and very close to the Queen.
And this is where it gets really brilliant, because the plot itself is part of the code. There's this moment where the Redcrosse Knight gets captured by the giant Orgoglio. Now, this isn't just, a bad day for our hero. It's a direct symbol for that dark period in English history when Queen Mary, Bloody Mary, and her husband Philip of Spain brought England back under Catholic control. The fantasy story is literally mirroring real historical events.
So, you might be wondering, where did Spenser get all these ideas? Well, he wasn't just pulling this stuff out of thin air. The man was incredibly well-read, and he was building his masterpiece on a foundation of centuries of literature and philosophy.
He was like a master chef, mixing all these different ingredients. He took the whole Knights on a Quest vibe from medieval romances, think King Arthur legends. He pulled ideas about virtue and truth straight from classical philosophers like Plato. From the Renaissance humanist movement, he grabbed the idea of the perfect, educated gentleman. And then he wrapped it all up in the massive, epic style of Italian poets like Ariosto. By mashing all of this together, he made something completely new, a story that was both a total blast to read and a really sophisticated piece of political commentary.
So, after all this code cracking, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's that art can be an incredibly powerful way to talk about the real world, even when it looks like it's just pure fantasy.
The Faerie Queene is the perfect proof that a story is never just a story. For Spenser and the people reading it back then, this poem was everything. It was a love letter to their queen, a defense of their religion, and a massive warning shot to their enemies. It was their way of processing a really dangerous, chaotic time by turning it into a timeless myth.
And that really brings us to a final question, one for you to think about. I mean, Spenser was doing this more than 400 years ago, but this kind of storytelling is still happening all the time. So the next time you're watching a big sci-fi movie about an alien invasion or reading a fantasy book about wizards and dragons, just ask yourself, what's the allegory here? What real-world message is hiding just under the surface?